introduction.
Yeah, and Martin, you might just want to delete this right now because it could be correct.
Well, hi, everyone. I'm with Phil today. It's Brett here. G'day, Phil.
Hey, g'day, Brett. Good to see you in sunny Melbourne.
Indeed it is. What a surprise. So today, I should say, of course, this is the Infectious Control Matters podcast, but people will probably work that out by now. We thought we'd just do something a bit different today because we got chatting a bit earlier and come up with this idea of what would be in your wish list if you in different roles. You could imagine of anything. What would it be? So we thought we'd just have a bit of a quick chin wag about our ideas about a wish list. So Phil, if you were leading an infection control team in a hospital now, in that role, what would be one thing that you wish you could have? You could conjure up anything.
If I could design anything in the hospital, if
anything
at all, if I was an IPC. So I'll qualify these statements by saying it is some time since I've worked in a hospital setting, healthcare setting. So forgive me for that. But I would think I would love that all data was electronic.
Yeah.
And I had a artificial intelligence platform that was able to flag to me every individual patient's risk of infection and type of infection, and then produce a suite of interventions that should be implemented, tailor-made for that patient on that day.
Wow, that's a wish list. Hey, that's not a bad idea, though. I kind of thought you'd come up with something to do with surveillance because that's like your bread and butter, but that's fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of surveillance in there, but there's also, well, I think the key attraction would be the timeliness of the information and the ability to tailor-make interventions because perhaps not the one blanket intervention is going to be as effective for everybody.
Yeah.
So I think we need to think about tailoring certain interventions. So we can identify the patients, the risks, the type, and then what to do. So
we're kind of getting that way with some programs that integrate. Well, there are electronic medical records in lots of hospitals now, but the integration of that with other systems, pathology, to timeless delays. So it's basically what you want to do is fast forward for the next 25 years and hopefully that's where we'll be. So can I just extend it a little bit more then? In which case, the hospital, let's just assume that we've got perfect electronic data in the healthcare settings. Yeah. And the extension of that then, of course, is perfect electronic data in primary care and pharmacies. So we could do all that drilling down on risk factors from both in the community and also in the health setting and bring them all together. Do you like that? I like that idea. Now, you touched on something earlier. It might have been the artificial intelligence side. And I suspect that's going to be some area that we see a bit more involvement with when it comes to algorithms and surveillance. All right, so that's your wish list. Is that okay? Have you got a wish list? Yeah, well, my wish list in that same context, I would like to be able to know almost in real time when someone has an infection, so absolute rapid diagnostics, coupled with real-time genomics. Nice. So, and when I say real time, I mean literally like real time. I know it's getting less and less, and weeks have become days in some instances when it comes to genomics. But I'm actually saying, you're Mr. Smith, and you're starting to get a runny nose, and I can immediately identify the pathogen, and through genomics where you got that through. And part of the reason that I like that idea is because we have a challenge, I think, in IPC where there's always this delayed effect of when something isn't quite done 100%. And when I say this, I'm not talking about in a punitive way with this sort of approach, but rather, when we were chatting earlier, I said, gave the example where if someone was to give someone 100 milligrams of IV morphine now, you'd see the effect of it, right? And you'd know the consequence of that straight away. And therefore, there's all these safety things put in to stop that kind of thing from happening. If I don't perform a technique properly with a central line, for example, and I contaminate the line and someone gets an infection 4 days later, there's this sort of delayed effect. And we as humans don't really respond that well, I don't think, when there's a delayed effect. When there's an immediate response. It's like if I said to you, Phil, smoking, you're a smoker, you're not really a smoker, but let's just say you're a smoker, and smoking is going to kill you potentially in 20 years' time. You might go, you know what, that's fine, I don't see the risks now, it's not causing me any harm now. You might continue to smoke for any number of reasons. That could be one of them. If I said to you, if you ever smoke now and it's going to kill you tonight, you're probably not going to have a smoke now. So I think that having real-time diagnostics and transmission pathways would help decision-making and behaviour change. But I wouldn't want it used in a punitive sense.
So it's a good point about the immediacy of the effect, or the lag of the immediacy of the effect.
Yeah.
It reminds me of those hand hygiene videos that are being developed, you know, with the colours.
Dances?
The dances.
I've been to a conference that said the dance.
I've been to a few conferences with the hand hygiene dances, and they're always a hit.
Not with me.
No, the hand hygiene where they have the colours, and when you touch something, it changes colour and stuff.
Yeah.
So it would be good with that real-time genomics, though, that if the result could actually also say, here is the genome, and this is where it came from. That guy, a couple of beds down, that's where it's come from.
Because to do that, then enables us to understand transmission pathways a lot more, which goes to my second wish list on that, and that is to be able to know the relative effect of different transmission pathways for different types of pathogens and subsequent infection. And so in that example, or just use C. difficile as an example for a moment, you know, what's the relative contribution of the environment versus or overlapped with antimicrobial stewardship versus colonization in the gut through contamination of food, those kinds of the air, what's the relative contribution of those things for every pathogen in an individual circumstance? Because that would help you tailor what you need to do and where you're going to target the resources. So rather than having this blanket, you know, everybody's got to have something clean 6 times a day, or everyone's got to wear this type of mask for this type of infection, understanding the real contribution of everything would be really valuable to be able to put those resources and interventions in place.
And what would that study look like?
Oh, well, I think it's probably a long, many decades away until we have rapid diagnosis and genomics.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's going to be possible. You're going to rely on modelling for a lot of that. But I think that'd be great. And extending that further, you know, childcare or schools where your child is sick, right? And do you send them to school? Do you send them to your childcare centre? Being able to go, you know, my child, 6 years old, is day 4 of a cold now. The likelihood, the risk to him spreading is going to be X. On average, he's going to spread it to 3 people in the classroom today. But if I wait till tomorrow, that risk is 10%. And, you know, I'm happy to accept that. Same with childcare settings and various other settings. You know, it would help inform decision-making, which is quite pie in the sky right now, about some of the things that we have to make decisions around. And not just decisions, IPCs, but decisions parents or people in policy roles about arbitrary cut-offs for certain things that might be correct or they could be way out either way.
Yeah.
I think we're a long way away from that one, mate. What about as a researcher then, Phil?
As a researcher? What was the question again, Brett?
If you had anything apart from money, let's just assume
research
money is apart from research money. As an infection control researcher, what would you like to answer or be able to answer, or what would help you answer stuff?
what would help me answer stuff. There's so many areas, isn't there, really, that we could breach into. But I sort of, one of the things I thought of was the risk of infection in home care settings. And, it's clearly becoming more prevalent now, is sending people home earlier with devices.
So when you say home care settings, we're not talking about nursing homes, we're talking about people's homes.
Homes,
yeah.
Yes, homes, houses. We're sending people home earlier. People want to stay at home longer. Sometimes they need to have devices managed. So, and that's all a good thing. It keeps people out of hospital. We assume that we keep people out of hospital, less likelihood of infection.
Do we know that?
I'm not sure if we. Well, I'm not sure if we do. If there has been some work done with bloodstream infections and central devices or central lung devices. But what about all the other types of infections that we have to deal with and manage? And so not just risk, but also resource. We're going to have more resources in our home setting to prevent infection. And is it reasonable to expect everybody's home to be
and the extension
environment that prevents infection?
Yeah. And so probably the extension from that is when you're having treatment at home, you've also got equipment and all the other things that go with it. And how is that? Is the risk more or less in those types of settings because it's your own flora? Clearly if it gets in the wrong place, it's your own flora, it's still a problem. But is it less of a risk? Is it the same sort of risk as healthcare? Or do we expect people to be cleaning stuff down or not?
Yeah.
If someone's got certain types of infections in the home, should we be thinking about better air quality for those individuals?
Presumably, they will be having regular visits to a healthcare setting for whatever they might be requiring. So does that compound the risk? So I'm doing a lot of speculation, but I think some of the basic science would be just looking at what are the risks comparable to a hospital setting.
Yeah, that's a good point. It made me think about, cooking at home and, when you cut up chicken and raw chicken. I don't know about you. My kids are also quite paranoid about when I'm cooking up. They cut
raw chicken. How many gloves do you wear?
Yeah, well, I don't wear any gloves. But you know what I mean? That sort of concept of you're always cautious about it and you wipe things down. I wonder where, clearly the risk was raw chicken. I'm not denying that. But great. Going back to my point about understanding the relative risk of stuff, it'd be really interesting to know, those types of things so that we're not overcooking things and we're not undercooking things. It's a bit like, I guess my other wish, thinking about within my environmental sort of interest hat on, and I don't know if we'll ever get there. Maybe we will. But what type of cleaning or disinfection is best in what type of circumstance? Is it UVC? Is it hydrogen peroxide? Is it a disinfectant wipe? Is it microfiber? Is it soap and water, right? And in what circumstance do we need to use different things? I think we're starting to get there, starting to get a bit of evidence on that. Again, they're really hard things to achieve because you're trying to pull about not just the effect of cleaning, but the type of cleaning intervention and all the human context factors that go along with that, which are near impossible to control for. So, that would be, and then extending that in different settings. What does that risk look like in hospitals compared to your home setting that you talked about, compared to childcare, compared to aged care?
So is your question, what's the minimum amount of cleaning you can get away with?
Well, it could be.
That's what it's sounding like. What's the minimum amount of cleaning I need to do?
Well, maybe not the minimum, but what's the minimum to get to the acceptable threshold of whatever that threshold is? Because we might be overcooking it in sometimes, and we might not be in many other times too. We might need a lot more. So,
I guess in practice we tend to use the same materials across the healthcare setting, the same. But does the whole healthcare setting need all that?
The whole in every circumstance, in every individual, and what we can't control for, really, in small sort of studies, even in large studies, is all the human factors that go along with that.
Yes.
The variables that, that's a talk for another day. But, I've had some recent experience with that, which is we'll save that one up. But so that. Oh, so is it my turn as a researcher?
What's your research wish list? Apart from money.
Apart from money, I think having access in a medium to short term, what would be good is to be able to have standardized surveillance definitions and standardized approaches to surveillance and have that data readily available.
I think we did have standardized surveillance definitions.
We haven't standardized in every hospital, Phil.
Tell me.
Every hospital has their own standardized definitions. And in some states. But, be able to not just have standardization, but have that universally and appropriately applied and have the validity that goes alongside that. But moreover, being able to access those data readily, because a lot of the research that we try and do, the biggest cost is data collection and having that done in a consistent way. You think about, UTIs and pneumonia, right? Most common infections, but no one's going to go and do surveillance on them all the time because it's too costly. It's just too much manpower, too costly, or person power, I should say. So, but if we had a way of doing that, right, and that being readily available, we could evaluate all these other things a lot better when it comes to what interventions work and don't work. So for me, it always comes back to having good, reliable data would be great, accessible.
Well, could I just take that a bit further there? So I think we need to change the definitions of infection. I think we need to remove the human element and use semi-automated or fully automated surveillance, which means we need to change the definitions.
Yeah.
And the reason, if I think you just said that the reason that UTI surveillance isn't done is because it's too hard, because the definition's too complex.
Well, it's too complex to do it in its current because of the definitions. It's too timely. Too timely.
If we had a simpler definition of a UTI, it doesn't need to be 100% perfect, but it needs to be consistent and uniformly applied.
There could be semi-automated or fully automated.
We could all do UTI surveillance.
Yeah, if it was fully automated, perhaps. Yeah.
So, are you saying the definitions are actually inhibiting?
Well, you could look at it that way then. So maybe the wish list is, the wish list is twofold.
The wish list is better, updated definitions.
Is definitions that will be able to be more efficiently undertaken but still need to be acceptable. If you think about all those criteria about what's a good surveillance definition, timeliness, and one of those characteristics is acceptability. So you can come up with something automated that people will go, that's a load of crap. And in which case you can have no buy-in from the people you're trying to change.
Has happened in the past. Yeah. First-hand experience.
Yeah. So it's simplistic as it sounds to have, automated UTI sounds ideal, yes. But we'll probably lose a lot of people who'll go, I don't believe in that definition.
So how about we co-design definitions, Brett? We engage various groups.
Didn't you do some work on this, Phil, in terms of discrete choice experiments?
That wasn't about definitions.
Okay.
No, it was about systems.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not just having those surveillance data standardized. It was actually being able to readily access those data.
Yeah.
So having that in a, dare I say it, national surveillance database where you could access that information to be able to evaluate, and even locally to be able to evaluate what you're doing in a much more holistic way.
Yeah.
There's a lot more data because it's automated than what we do. One of the challenges with infection control evidence is it's difficult to do research. It's difficult to do high quality research in infection control. Why? Because they're relatively rare events, relatively rare in the context of other research. So you need a lot of people and a lot of hospitals to actually really demonstrate something's going to work or not in an RCT. So that's near impossible to do practically for a lot of things that we need to do. So we do rely on the other available evidence that we've got. And so we could fix some of these things. We can get much better evidence for the science of infection control more broadly.
Well, good. A little bit of work to do ahead of us then.
Just a little bit, yeah. Get cracking with those AI computer
Well,
goes.
let's get some electronic data. Let's get some new definitions.
Let's survey some stuff we probably need to survey that are a bit more common.
And find out a bit more about
Transmission pathways, I think are just really, really great to be able to know a bit more about that. And I think that's going to really, I think it will explode in the next 10 years, our understanding of that, particularly as genomics becomes more to the fore. We'll understand some of those things hopefully a lot better than what we do now. Well, Phil.
Good to see you, Brett.
You too. Nice chatting.
Must be time for a wine.
I think it is.
Yep.
All right. Catch you soon.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.